Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Industry Perspectives. I'm your host, Ainsley Bowden, and today my guest is Paul Martin, known amongst the gaming community as Cerebral Paul. Paul has been gaming his entire life, and he has lived with cerebral palsy his entire life as well. He is an outspoken member of the community when it comes to accessibility options in games, and he has offered advice to specific developers when it comes to developing their games around those options as well. So today we wanted to talk about that. We wanted to talk about the accessibility conversation within the gaming industry, how people who may not be involved or be knowledgeable on the subject can get involved, as well as what developers can do to better support their games. We talk about all that and more. Let's get to it. And we are live with Mr. Paul Martin, or as you affectionately know him, Cerebral Paul. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. And as a certain section of the group knows me, Pineapple Paul, but we won't get into that.
Yes, we've already covered a few other names that you've been affectionately known by through the years, but it's good to finally sit down and chat with you. You know, we've talked for a while, we've played games together, and we've wanted to do this for a little bit. Sorry it took me so long to get back to you. You kind of know what my schedule's been like lately. But I'm happy to finally get to sit down with you and kind of talk about some of the things we've discussed, which is, you know, the importance of accessibility in the gaming industry and for developers, publishers, etc., and some of the kind of insight you can provide specifically in that arena, right?
Right.
So we will absolutely get to all of that, of course, as I always do with these conversations. So I like to learn about the person, like to learn about your history with gaming. So you've been gaming. It's rare to have someone who's been gaming longer than me, which is awesome. So why don't we start with when you first got into gaming? What was that experience like? What originally got you into it?
Well, my first tablet was an Etch a Sketch. Oh wait, no, that's basically I grew up because of my age, and just so everybody, I'm 55. I started gaming probably around 74, 75.
Okay.
In the arcades mostly, but
yeah.
Then along came the Atari 2600.
Of course.
And of course I also had seen Pong by that point as well.
Yes.
I go way back, So that basically I've grown up with gaming. Literally, the whole industry has grown up with me, or I've grown up with it my whole life. Awesome. A lot of people can say that, but they can't say they've been there since the beginning.
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah, pretty much in the mid 70s was arcade.
Yeah.
And of course, Atari kind of set the revolution ablaze, right? So, yeah, it's really cool. It's funny you mentioned Pong. I actually went to like a retro video game convention several years ago, and they had classics, including the original Pong with the joystick on each side. And me and my friends sat there, and I swear we played Pong more than we played any other game while we were there, because it's still so like, it's still so competitive, like one-on-one with a friend. It's pretty funny.
And sometimes just to do something like that, it gets very addictive. Okay, come on, I can get you this time. I know.
Exactly. So have you been gaming the whole time? Did you ever kind of take a break, or have you kind of lived through the 8-bit, 16-bit?
I've never taken a break. Now, awesome. I have gone, of course, I've gone from console to, at one point I owned a Commodore 64.
Sure.
And then I owned a Coco, a TRS-80 Coco, and a TRS-80 Model 3 and a Model 4. And, so I've because
I know what you're talking about, but you definitely speaking to some that don't.
Yeah, the Coco was TRS-80 Radio Shack's version of the color computer. I think it was a 4-color. All on the wonderful bits of 4-color.
Yeah. That's awesome. Go ahead.
So, but because I'm also into computers, gaming has always been central to it. Yeah. The main reason I ever kept my computers upgraded was because a new game came out and I needed a new sound card, or I needed a new video card. So even though I can do all the other stuff, gaming is why.
Yeah.
So awesome. Yeah, I've never taken a break.
Wow. Yeah, you definitely, I would say, of all the people I've spoken to, because I speak to a lot of people obviously who have been gaming a long time like myself, but if you started in the mid 70s and then have never taken a break, you're definitely one of the elite, I would say, when it comes to the history with gaming. So that's awesome. Obviously, we're talking about accessibility today, and it goes without saying, people who know you and who know you, game with you, etc., like I do, know that your name is there for a reason, right? So
Right.
you live with cerebral palsy. So why don't you, just for people who don't know you or don't know what that means, even,
Yeah.
let's broaden it out and say, okay, so how has cerebral palsy affected kind of your life ever since a younger age when you were gaming and, continues to today? Can you give them some kind of context there?
Okay, and just to give them a little bit of background, cerebral palsy is a classification of over 2,000 different conditions.
Okay.
And it can affect many people in different ways. Sense of balance. In my case, it's dexterity and muscle control and
Right.
reaction times. Some people get it so bad that they're extremely spastic to where they can't control their movements hardly at all.
Mm,
Um, and also, it also can limit their speech. You can usually hear it in me when I get spastic. If I laugh, my throat tightens up. So I
really?
have a
Okay.
very specific type of laugh. Real quick story. I actually went to work at a middle school once, and my first day in the office, I'm talking, and the guy comes up to me and goes, "Is your name Paul Martin?" And I look at this guy. I have no idea who he is. I go, yeah. He goes, "Yeah, we went to school in the fourth grade together. You were in my class. I recognized your laugh." So he hadn't seen me for over 30 years
Wow.
at that point. I'm like, that's impressive.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
my laugh used to shame me. I used to get really actually angry when people would point out my laugh because
Mm,
it made me different than everybody else.
sure.
So it took me
Yeah,
a while to grow into that and say,
sure.
okay, it's something that people like about me, so let's go with it.
Hmm.
It is who I am. I can't do anything about it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, so yeah, in my case, it mostly affects my left side more than my right.
Okay.
That's why when I'm having trouble with the controller, it's usually left hand sided stuff. But I still can't, like, even with my right hand, if I have to go hit the B button really quick or whatever, I
Yeah.
actually have to look down at the controller or yeah, I can actually have to hear myself tell myself, go hit the B button.
Oh,
So
okay.
my thumb knows what to do.
Hmm.
So if all of a sudden I have to do a lot of that thing all at once, I can't do it.
Right. Yeah.
I can see on the screen what I need to do. I can know the pattern, and no matter what I do, it's just not going to happen.
I got you.
And that's where my frustration comes in. And that's what
Sure.
a lot of people don't always understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you and I have talked, we played Halo together when
Right.
Infinite released a few times. And I remember you describing some of that to me as we were
Yeah.
playing and trying, it's tough for people sometimes like myself to just kind of conceptualize or visualize.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you pointed that out because, it's again, it's hard to understand if you don't have to deal with it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And sometimes I feel like I think I put you and Travis on the spot a couple of times because you guys do the reviews, and I will ask
Yeah.
you, how does it fit into the accessibility
Yeah,
type?
you do.
And you both go, I don't
I know.
know.
I think I remember. I don't remember. It might have been Forza actually,
Yeah.
Horizon 5 that I reviewed, and I remember you asking me that, and I said, "Well, I can see that there's a generous amount of options for accessibility. Everything. Color blindness is a big
Yeah.
one, right? And certain motions and automatic functions and stuff. But to your point, I don't know how to test them, right? I'm not
Right.
capable of testing them for people who may have
Yeah.
different disabilities. So it's tough. Yeah, it is tough.
Yeah. I think with me, and we've talked about this before, I just want to get to reviewers to acknowledge if they're there or not sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that it needs to become part of the normal discussion and not the side discussion.
Yeah,
You know,
I think that's perfectly fair. Yep. Yep. So with that, how long have you lived with this now? Has it been in your entire life?
my
And
entire life, I was born this way.
yeah, okay. Okay. And so you've kind of had to over the years, just,
Right.
grow into it and figure out how to kind of accomplish any task that I guess some people
Right.
would take for granted, like we're talking about, right? Hitting a B button on a controller
Right.
is just a
Yeah.
natural thing, but
We've
it's
come a
different.
long way from the single button Atari controller,
Yes. Yes, we have.
but even then, so I've had to grow up in playing games that I enjoy that sometimes I just can't do them,
Yeah.
or I couldn't do them good enough for React, even with those crappy controllers, because I'm sorry, they were pretty crappy. I
Yeah.
couldn't, as much as I wanted to, and I played a lot and had as much fun as I could.
Right.
There were some games I just like, a lot of people like the old games like Centipede and
Mhm.
Space Invaders and
Sure.
some of the games that required you to really get pretty spastic in your movements and move around the screen. And as much as I played them, and I went, yeah, it's all right. I couldn't ever, if I want to throw away $20,000 in quarters, I could have, but and some games I did. Dragon's Lair was one.
Oh yeah,
I could see the pattern that you had to do for Dragon's Lair because it was a set pattern,
sure.
but I couldn't do it, and I could spend like literally 5, 10, $15 trying to get through that darn thing, and ain't gonna happen.
I think Dragon's Lair took more of our money when we were younger than maybe the other game, in the arcade. So let me ask you this, because I've had conversations with some others as well around this topic, but I always want to get different perspectives, and I feel obviously your perspective is very valuable on this topic, which is we're definitely hearing more and more about accessibility options and how developers are looking in that in their games in the industry today, even compared, I would say, to just a few years ago. It seems to be a much bigger topic now, which is fantastic. But from your perspective, generally speaking, how are developers doing with their accessibility options, and we'll say major AAA games, right? Major releases, with accommodating the various disabilities that are out there today? Do you feel that solid progress has been made? Obviously, it probably goes without saying, further progress can always be made. But do you feel that there's a good pace that they're making progress, or do you feel like it's still lackluster in a lot of areas?
So in the last, I would say closer to 7 to 10 years, we've seen a major uptick in accessibility options and such, because some things have been there for a long time, so people didn't even think about them as accessibility. Colorblind mode,
right?
And subtitles and things like that. People just, well, that's just part of it, but that's just part of the accessibility suite that is slowly being added onto. And I'm always going to do this, and because it's my honest opinion that part of the big drive for this has been Microsoft, the accessibility controller.
Yep.
They actually have a list of things they expect in their games, and they've been pushing this forward a lot. And I think a lot of it has to do, and I didn't know this until recently, the head of Microsoft, his son had cerebral palsy.
Yes.
And he recently just passed away at a very young age.
Yeah.
So our hearts go out to him. But I think that was a lot of the big drive for him to push the accessibility side.
Yes.
So yeah, we're seeing a big shift. I don't think we're seeing it fast enough. I mean, even what was it? Deathloop came out.
Yep.
With almost no accessibility options. Now remember, Deathloop is a Microsoft title at this point.
It is.
And it has no accessibility options. Now I understand that, and I'm going to kind of go off the rails a little bit here. And it's something that needs to be done, that accessibility needs to be planned on and looked at from the beginning of the game, not tacked on after. So I understand that. This game was started long before that acquisition. But I think games going forward should always have that in their list. Okay, what are we going to have as far as accessibility goes from the get-go?
Mm-hmm.
Just like everything else they do, artwork, all that other stuff, the story planning out. I think accessibility needs to become a part of everything.
Yeah.
There, I don't know if I want to broach this really that deep, but there are some people that don't think that accessibility should be there if it doesn't need to be, or if that's not the vision of the developer. I think that should be the division of every developer. Options are options. Just because an easy mode is there doesn't mean you have to use it.
That's fair. Yep. Yeah, that seems to be a raging topic, which of course Elden Ring, as we're recording, has reignited. As there's always a game that comes along every few months that seems to reignite that conversation. But yeah, I think your opinion is obviously very valid, and I think that I've had the same conversation with others, like I said. So so one of the things that we've talked about is you're speaking about Microsoft. We talked about their accessibility controller, which was just a fabulous piece of tech. I was fortunate to talk to part of the design team at E3 in 2018, I believe, or one of the years, 2018, 19. And it's just, it's won tons of awards and, a great piece of tech. But you mentioned, the drive that Xbox specifically has with that. And we talked before, you're an Xbox ambassador. And correct me if I'm wrong, don't you also stream in collaboration sometimes with Xbox, or do I have that wrong?
Yeah, I actually know you're not wrong. I started just a couple weeks ago officially.
Right.
I am
That's
a
right.
stream host on the Xbox Ambassadors channel.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
I've done a couple of shows before that, and I've been in a couple of their presentations before that. So yeah,
That's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm loosely tied in with Microsoft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that's great though, because I think it furthers your point that the Xbox team, Microsoft team, however you want to say it, has a focus on accessibility, right? And if they're doing streams and they're putting kind of templates that have to be met for their game development, then they're seemingly driving in the right direction, right?
yeah, I think so too, and I always thank them when I get a chance because without them, I wouldn't be playing a lot of the games that I'm playing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because the options wouldn't be there.
Right.
I even consider Game Pass a part of the accessibility options because
Really?
I can
Okay.
now I can now try games without paying for them.
That's
So I'm not blowing $50 for a game that I can play for 10 minutes and go, I'm out. You know?
Yeah, I'd never thought about it that way, honestly. I mean, we talk about being able to try more games, play more
Right.
games, and then see what you like, but I had never considered it from the accessibility perspective, right?
Yeah.
Where you can actually dive into a game now, see what options it has, see if it's good for you, and then if not, no big deal. Off of, you know, you're not going to lose the money, like you just said.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
I know one of the games, because you joked with me about it a few months back, is Forza Horizon 5, where you were showing me some clips of you racing, and I was pretty intimidated, I'm going to say, because you were kicking butt.
Yeah. That auto steer feature, even though, it took a little heat because people were like, well, no, you don't even really have to drive the car. Yeah, you kind of still do. And I still lose races. I just, at least now I'm competitive, you
Sure,
know.
sure.
You
So
know,
do you feel that Forza Horizon 5 is a good example of modern accessibility features that you'd like to see in other games?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It puts us it puts us back in the playing field and not just kind of dragging along.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's got to be tough. Yeah, it's got to be tough, especially if it's like we talked about Halo previously, but especially if it's an IP or a franchise, what have you, that you really enjoy. I'm sure you've had some come along the way, that games that have been you've really been interested in, have looked fantastic, play well, et cetera,
Yep.
but they simply don't support the accessibility options for you to really enjoy it, like you said.
Yep. I will say right now that Elden Ring is one of those, though I have played Elden Ring because it was gifted to me.
Okay.
No, and they gifted it to me knowing that I may or not play it that long.
Sure.
And it's beautiful and I want to play it more, but I feel like I've hit a wall. You
Yeah.
know, it's just, and it's a shame because it's not just, we're no longer, I guess, in the sense of the raw numbers, we are a small percentage. But when you're talking upwards of millions of gamers who are disabled in some way, who can't
Yeah.
play that game, that's millions of eyes that can't get on your game.
Yeah.
You do. I mean, shouldn't that change? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I don't get that train of thought. I really don't. Well, it's just a million people out of however million people there are. And like, yeah, but that's a million people who could be spending money either on your game or within your game, depending on the game,
Sure.
that you're never going to see. And they're not going to be able to enjoy the game because just go watch it on YouTube. It's the same thing. Yeah, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no.
No, it's not. And yeah, it seems almost an obvious equation that when you're developing a game, and we've heard it directly from developers many times, is they just want as many people to play their game as possible.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you're looking at it from an equation standpoint, that includes people with disabilities, and you
Yep.
would think it would be an obvious answer that you want to have your game accessible to as many people as possible. So
Yep.
yeah,
Let me speak. One thing funny about that is Hades.
Yep.
When Hades came out,
yeah,
it came out on a console, it didn't have difficulty settings. I don't know if you remember that when it first
I do remember
launched.
that. Yes.
And there were people saying, well, it's the developer's vision, blah, blah, blah. And I said something and I tagged the developer in my tweet.
I remember
And,
this actually. Yes.
and within a day or two, they announced, hey, guess what? We're going to patch it. We're going to put difficulty in.
Yeah.
We just kind of forgot about it on console. There you go. So
There you
much
go.
for your vision. Yeah. Or so much for the user's view of what the vision was.
So much for the argument. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that because that blew up, right? Like
Yeah,
when you tagged him back, yeah.
yeah,
But it's good, it's good. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would think one of the things I talk about often on these conversations is the state of the gaming industry today, right? And the sheer amount of accessibility, not in the gaming sense, but
right,
accessibility that people like us have to developers, to publishers, creators, etc., because of social media,
yeah,
instant feedback, YouTube, all these things, right? So the ability for you to respond to the developer directly and for them to see it same day
yeah,
instantly and say, "Oh, we missed this," right? Is we never
yeah.
had that growing up, right? That's only
No,
a thing that's even possible recently.
right.
And I feel that's probably helping this conversation and helping the cause of accessibility within games because now, there's so much conversation about it which can be shared directly with developers all the
Yeah.
time.
I've actually done interviews through 4GQ TV and a couple other things with developers, and
Mhm.
some will bring up these subjects and they'll go, you know what, we didn't think about that, or
Mm.
they'll say, well, I've been doing this for a long time and thinking about accessibility is just recently coming into play. So
Yeah.
they want our feedback because a lot of times it's not that they're trying to be, purposely leave us out. They just don't think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we don't have, I don't think, developers out there trying to be uninclusive, right?
Right.
Or anything of that nature. But yeah,
But it's a matter of they don't think what could we do to make this more accessible for more people.
yeah,
Because like you said, I can say what are the accessibility features like, and aside from looking at a list of menu options, you don't know what works and what doesn't.
right. Just a
So
fact. I mean, yeah, and I would have to imagine as this conversation continues to kind of blossom and spread throughout the industry further and further, I would have to imagine that core developers, anyone developing a game, basically, as long as you're not a single person making a game, is hiring a kind of accessibility people onto their staff, right? So they can speak to
yeah,
specific things, test them, because as you said earlier, right, this is not something you can just tack on when the game's finished. You
right.
have to build certain aspects of games with this in mind. And I believe, I know Forza Horizon won awards for it. We've talked about that already. There was another game recently, I'm forgetting, I think it might have been something out of PlayStation first party that might have been Last of Us 2. I don't remember, but one of
Well,
them.
Last of Us 2 got a lot of awards.
Okay.
Psychonauts 2, not
Yeah.
only did they get a lot of headlines, they also got a lot of heat because of invincibility mode.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Because I remember you posting something about that, and I was actually kind of defending you to the people. It's like, I 100% in Psychonauts 2. I love it to death. I didn't
Yeah,
use invincibility mode. Why would I care if that's in the game?
yeah.
Like, it doesn't impact me at all negatively. It's very strange.
You mean you don't care that my gamer score might be higher than yours because I was able to do it? Wow, yeah.
Yeah, right. Um, but yeah, I think you're right. It might have been Last of Us 2 or one of those anyway. My point
Yeah,
was that they were showing why they were developing sections of the game where the accessibility really played into that and the way the
right.
game was coded to kind of accept these different options. And I think that's really important. There's obviously, I know it's not as simple for developers who may hear this. It's not as simple as just saying, we're going to do this, everything we can, because there's a cost associated to it and there's
Right.
cost benefit. But kind of to your point earlier, there's also benefit on the back end, right? So I'm sure companies are kind of looking at how they can better
Yep.
do that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and it helps when the big guys like Microsoft they're saying,
Of
"Here's
course.
a list of things we'd like to see in the game, if
Yeah.
possible."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. You need the bigger publishers, the leaders
yeah,
of the industry to kind of lead the way.
yeah.
That's
Be,
their
because
responsibility.
because I will be the first to admit that not every option fits every game. Invincibility, though it would be fun, does not fit into Mortal Kombat.
Or Halo.
Doesn't or Halo. It would be a blast maybe for like a few minutes. Yeah, go ahead, shoot me there. Yeah, see what happens. Yeah.
um, so let me ask you this. We're talking about awareness. We're talking about how it spreads through the industry. In your opinion, we're smaller creators, right? Run an outlet, and I've talked with some of the people who write for my site around this, and as you know, I think right, and this is going to be part of it. We started last year the Good in Gaming initiative, which highlights all sorts of things that gaming can benefit, including
I
accessibility.
was one of your first highlighted, actually.
Yes,
There
remember
you go.
you were in my article that I wrote last
Yeah.
year. So, we talk about everything: mental health, depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, all these things. And so, this will be part of featured of that. But I felt as a someone who runs an outlet, even a smaller outlet, there's a responsibility there. And I feel that you can't broaden the discussion and you can't raise awareness without the big, as we just said, on the development side, right? Same goes for media and publishing side, where you need the bigger people in that side of the industry to be responsible and talk about
Yep.
these things. So let me know your thoughts, but I don't feel that the bigger sites, right, the multimedia national corporations or multinational corporations, do a very good job of talking about this stuff.
They don't.
Okay. All
They
right. Yeah,
they
it seems like an
they
afterthought.
they find that 2 special months out of the year where we're kind of picked out of the group,
Yeah. Yeah.
National Disability Awareness Month or whatever, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden they do this article, and after
Mhm.
that you don't hear a thing about it.
Yeah, and that's so disingenuous, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't that's not what we need to see. And it's weird to me that if a site like mine can do it, then any site can do it, right?
Right.
Because I mean, it's not like I don't have to really say anymore, but there's no reason why it
No.
can't be done on a much
And,
broader
and
level.
I think if they did that, it wouldn't be so hard on guys like me that every time something comes up, I've got to deal with the loudmouths from the anti-accessibility side, for lack of a better term,
Hmm.
that come jumping at me like I've got a target on my back because they refuse to learn or understand what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think if some of the bigger media outlets and stuff would make it part of the discussion and go, here's why this is good, you
Yeah.
know, that some of those voices would fade away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So as with many debates in life among
Yeah.
ideologies, it always comes down to education, right?
Yeah.
And really, that's what we're talking about. Is we're talking about the people who reach the broadest percentage of the audience, offering education on topics like accessibility and other topics that are
Yeah.
meaningful as well. And they just need to do a better job of it. So
Yep.
yeah,
And I think you've seen some of my responses. I try to remain very calm and very,
Mhm.
very controlled in how I respond and try to explain things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you've also seen the other side where I'm in the private room going, "These guys are a bunch of." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I
Because
know that well.
it is hard not to take it personally sometimes.
I
Yeah,
can
it really
imagine.
is.
Yeah.
And people say, "Well, how come you don't just ignore it? Because if I ignore it, that's one more voice being silenced." That's
Sure.
kind of what they want. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, again, you're talking from a standpoint of understanding and knowledge, right? You're the
Yeah.
one who has the knowledge on the subject. So
Yep.
you absolutely that needs to be spread 100%.
And that actually came up last week. Somebody said, all these regular abled people are speaking for the disabled people. They really don't have the right. I'm like, excuse me, hi, been this way all my life. Let me speak. Yeah, if they want to champion for me, more power to them.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a line there, right? Like raising awareness and broadening
yeah,
the voice of this message is one thing. I would never claim to speak for someone with a disability
right.
more than raise awareness for people
Yeah,
with disabilities. Those are two different things, right?
yeah.
So,
Oh, I've also been told that disabled people don't want the gaming industry to cater to them. I'm like, hello. As a disabled person, let me tell you, I want to be able to play the games. I'm just saying, yeah,
don't you love when people tell you what you want?
yeah, yeah.
um,
Mhm.
so in this vein, for people who listen to this and who just play games, they may watch a stream once in a while, they may tune into YouTube, your casual gamer. What would be your opinion on how they can better contribute to this conversation, right? If they're just thinking, I don't run an outlet, I don't have a channel, I'm not a creator, I just play games, right? What would be your kind of advice on how they can best at least get involved in the conversation and either educate themselves or, like we're talking about, help spread awareness?
One, educate themselves. There's always
Okay.
people like me who always say, reach out to us, and you can ask us any question you want. I'm a disabled gamer, but I'm different than say Sightless Combat, who's a blind gamer,
Sure. Yeah.
or Steve Saylor, who's also a blind gamer, who's also now working directly with one of the companies. I don't remember which one, where he is a consultant for their accessibility.
I think it's Xbox, if I remember correctly.
He just got a new job, I think.
Another one? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I saw one of his announcements, but anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're out there, and the other thing is, if you've got a lot of people on your feed that are saying all this negative stuff toward accessibility, and counter it. Don't just say agree with it or like the post. Say, you know what, you might want to look closer at this. Educate them as well, or at least point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because this discussion isn't going to change overnight. And yeah, you're not going to change very many minds, but I keep telling people, if I can get one person to go, oh, I didn't think about it in those ways, then I've done my job. And in all these discussions I've had, be it Psychonauts, Hades, or Elder Ring, there's always that one guy who says, you know what, I didn't think about that. Mm-hmm. Good. That means that you're listening. You're at least willing to hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes to get things started.
100%. Yeah. And it's actually, I mean, we've joked a couple times about some of the state of internet or Twitter interactions, which can be negative sometimes. But I always tell people, sure, you have those interactions, but there are a lot of genuinely good people. I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for Twitter, right? And I wouldn't know a lot of the people I talk to on a daily basis who are truly fantastic people. So all it takes is someone, like you just said, saying, I hadn't thought about it that way. And already now you've got someone thinking differently around this conversation. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Yep.
So that's good stuff.
That's the first step a lot of times.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, Paul, I think the last thing I want to ask really is, just kind of continuing on that last point is really, what else would you have to say to the audience listening to this around accessibility conversation in games? And also to close us out, where can people find you, interact with you, find, all the things you work on? Because I know you work in several different areas as a content creator.
Okay. So I think the biggest thing that I always try to point out, especially in multiplayer games, and you and I have talked about this, is when you're playing with other people, if they're doing really bad compared to you, if they're only getting 1 or 2 or 3 kills a round or whatever, or don't message them or tell them how bad they are. They could be somebody like me who hasn't bothered to tell anybody they're disabled for the longest time. I didn't bring it up. There is a hidden shame sometimes in going, well, I'm a disabled gamer. I'm one of the more boisterous ones. I've always been a loudmouth. But there are a lot of people who don't like to share that information. So it's all, if you question whether they're having trouble, ask them if you can help. You might message them and say, is there anything I can do to help you, or are you having difficulty with this? And a lot of times they'll be willing to answer, but don't just automatically assume, get good, because that's the last thing we want to hear, or go play Roblox, or many other things.
Sure.
So yeah, patience is the big one.
Okay.
Just make gaming more welcoming for everybody.
Yeah.
And it'll make it a much better place.
Very
because
fair.
for me, I literally haven't really left the house since COVID started, over 2 years ago.
Wow.
There's a lot of people shut in like that, even before COVID and after, that are disabled, that want a game, but they don't party up because of those kind of reactions.
Sure.
I didn't play with other people for the longest time because I got tired of 12-year-olds telling me how bad I was. I know how bad I am. I don't need you to tell me that. Sure. So, just like I said, be patient, be kind, be a good gamer.
Yeah.
Let's see where you can find me. Best place to find me is on Twitter, Cerebral Paul 1. I have a Twitch channel and a YouTube channel, both of them Cerebral Paul. On Xbox, I'm Cerebral Paul 921. And I'm on multiple shows that you will find down in the description.
Sure,
Ains will post those. I'm serious. I told him I'm on 4 shows a week. None of them are on my channel, so the links will be down below. So,
very good.
But yeah, I do many different things, and I try to stay involved. Actually, I will say I do one thing on the Xbox Ambassadors Twitch feed. I have a show every Monday called Gaming Differently, and if you want to tune in and watch me there, you can. And if not, do it anyway. No, I'm kidding. It's going to make me fall out of my chair.
All
I
good,
always
man.
tell
Well,
people I'm one of the few gamers that needs a seatbelt because I'm always sliding out of my chair.
well, man, it's been a pleasure. And like Paul said, I'm going to put all the links to all the different areas you can find Paul and some further information on the conversation we had today down below as well. Like I said, this is also part of our Good in Gaming initiative at Season Gaming. We have a separate tab at the top of our site where you can find all of our things related to Good in Gaming. Paul has been featured in an article I did previously. We have videos around mental health, depression, anxiety, toxicity towards women, all kinds of kind of important topics across the gaming industry. So we love when people check those out. We love the support. So please do. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. Paul, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. Sorry it took so long for me to get to you. But it's an important conversation, and I'm definitely going to say it's not going to be the last time we speak, and we'll keep pushing forward with this conversation day in, day out, man.
And thanks for giving me the chance. Thanks for giving me the voice.
Always welcome. So thank everyone as always for tuning in. As I already kind of preached about Good in Gaming, please check that out. This was Industry Perspectives, and we will see you soon. Till then.